Hello, everybody. Welcome back into another edition Prime Sports World, coming to you from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Izzy looking fresh with the sunglasses on. I'm, of course, your host, David On Point Huffin. Right there is the CEO, Mr. Israel Rivera. And on today's episode of the Prime, we're going to be talking about the Buffalo Bills as we complete the AFC East, as we do a season preview for every single team in the National Football League. And also, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. We've done every division basically. We were on the NFC East, the AFC West, and the NFC West that we have to complete before the NFL season started. Also, me and Izzy did our Fantasy Football Weekly show yesterday. That was action-packed. We give our rankings for the season. Keep an eye out for that content. Go check that out. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills, my friend, and Bills Mafia. Can you say a little bit disappointing last season? As we move into this season?
Absolutely disappointed to lose in the divisional round against the Cincinnati Bengals.
And not even be remotely competitive in that game as well.
Yeah, that's like in the fashion that you lost it is what disappoints Bills fans, I think.
Yep.
I think if you lost it like last minute key from Joe Burrow.
I mean, if you lost how you lost it last season, where you get beaten, was it 13 seconds or whatever? But let's talk about this season a little bit. Let's go into their storylines. Let's talk about this offense a little bit. Very reliant on Josh Allen in 2022, 2023. What do you think the outlook looks like for this offense? And will they be able to rely on Josh Allen a little bit less this season, as he seemed to be basically the only really factor on offense? If Josh Allen was cooking, Buffalo was good. If Josh Allen was struggling, either with his arm or on the ground, this team struggled a little bit. What are we thinking about this offense this season? As are they going to be as reliant on Josh Allen this season as much as they were in the past?
Well, I mean, he's your franchise quarterback. I mean, the team is going to live and die with Josh Allen's arm, in my opinion. I mean, that's why he's getting the big bucks, right? They are going to have to rely. If Kyle Allen from Houston comes in, or Matt Barkley comes in, I mean, I don't care how good you think your defense is or how many good weapons you have, your team is going to go into the dumpster. So, yeah, they are going to rely on Josh Allen. I don't know how much, because I think adding Damian Harris, James Cook another season, I think you can run the football. I think Latavius Murray is on this team. I think you got guys on this team where it's like, okay, we don't have like smaller backs now, as opposed to what they used to have in previous years. We have some bigger guys that can run north-south that are like Buffalo tough, right? So I think what Sean McDermott should be doing is taking off the stress of everything, dies on your arm. I think we have some running backs here that we can give the rock to, and that we can run the football in. I mean, you play in cold weather. You have to be able to run the football. This has been a problem with me for Buffalo for the last couple of seasons. Even though I think they've gotten better at it, but I think this year you have the running game capabilities to take that pressure off of Josh Allen. But they're still going to rely on him. I mean, he's still going to pass for 40 times a game.
I think his role in the running game, I think, will be diminished this season. I think the guys that they have on their roster, James Cook, Damian Harris, Latavius Murray. It's unfortunate that Naheem Hines went down with an unfortunate accident, but where he ended up tearing his ACL. But I think they're going to, in the passing game, it's all on him. Like, there's nobody else. Like, right? Like, he's still going to be throwing it 40 yards down the field. They're going to rely on him a lot in the passing game. But I think in the running game, I think that's where they'll limit some of those Josh Allen hits that he takes throughout the season, because he was clearly banged up a little bit towards the end of last year. I think he was dealing with some sort of elbow injury. I think either last year or the year before. Taking those hits in the running game just really adds up on a quarterback's body. And it's even somebody who's as big and strong as Josh Allen, I still think that those chinks in that armor there. Josh Allen, they were relying on him, but I think the running game, I think they're going to rely on him just a little bit. Yes. Let's talk about this roster as a whole. Looking at the roster as a whole, if you had to point out a major flaw in the way this roster is constructed, what do you think it is?
Oh, man. It's a team that has, defensively, I mean, can I say? I mean, maybe losing Edmonds is maybe a hole. We don't know what they're gonna get. From the linebacker position. Was it the middle? Did they? He left from the middle linebacker position, right?
Correct. Yeah, he was their middle linebacker. They're
Yeah,
replacing him with Tyrell
he's the
Dodson.
middle linebacker. So I think if there's a hole, there it is. What are they gonna do to replace that? What are they gonna do to replace him in the middle of the defense at the middle linebacker? And we all know the middle linebacker is like the quarterback of the defense. I'm not really worried about the offensive line. I think they drafted Osiris Torrance at guard. I would say maybe interior line, but I think their line is pretty solid already. So I mean, this is a team that has very few holes.
Yeah, I
You
think.
know what?
But
I will give
I
one hole though.
go ahead.
I will give one, even though I love Gabe Davis. I know is he really a number two?
I don't. I think the verdict's
I
still
don't
out
think
on him
so.
very much.
The
Whether
verdict's
or not
still out.
he's the number one or number two. I think if we're looking at their roster, I
No,
think
no, yes,
they
Gabe
have
is the
two
number
major
one.
holes. I think I noticed both the tackle positions. I think Deion Dawkins is a
But
fine player, but he's nothing special. Same thing with Spencer Brown. The offensive line as a whole, I think, could be a better unit. They went out and signed Connor McGovern in free agency. He's an upgrade over whoever they were playing at left guard. Was it Roger Scaffold last season? But he's a really good football player coming over from the New York Jets, or was it the San Francisco 49ers? One of those two. But yeah, he's an upgrade at the left guard position. But I still think this offensive line could do a better job protecting Josh Allen, even though he's difficult to protect because of how much he moves around in the pocket. But I think that they could give up more running lanes for this running game because his running game was pretty abysmal outside of Josh Allen running the rock last season. And then talking about, middle linebacker, replacing Tremaine Edmonds is going to be tough. He was a focal point of this defense, a signal caller, and they're replacing him with a guy who didn't play much because of how many snaps Edmonds played last season. So we'll see how that ends up shaking out. From there, final storyline. Let's talk about this season. Is this Super Bowl or bust, in your opinion, for the Buffalo Bills? Anything but a Super Bowl considered disappointment?
absolutely, absolutely. We're with the time. The clock has been ticking since last season, right? I mean, 2 seasons ago, they were like, "Oh my God, like Buffalo's right there, Buffalo's right there," but they need another season of disappointment. And then last season was okay, this could be the best team in the NFL. I thought that they could win 16 games. I thought they could win 15, 16 games last season. But they at points in the season they were the best team in the NFL, in my opinion. But I think not making the Super Bowl last year was a disappointment. I think the clock is ticking. I think you got at least another window. You got a good window of 4 or 5 years, but what's the window looking like with Sean McDermott, right?
Yeah,
If he
yeah,
can't get
yeah.
to the Super Bowl,
I think if this
he's
team ends up
got to
coming
have
up
those
short,
conversations.
I think if this team comes up short of even the conference championship game this season, I think the conversation around Sean McDermott's going to start to swirl.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's any coach that's going to be under the microscope, I don't want to say hot seat. I don't want to say hot seat. I want to say under a microscope is Sean McDermott. Because I don't want to say, okay, God, if they make the AFC Championship and they lose a heartbreaker, is he going to get fired? No.
No.
But do I think?
But I think any disappointment season where
sure.
you basically don't show up in a playoff game again, I think he potentially could be out of a job.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this for sure is a Super Bowl or bust season. Last season was quote unquote a Super Bowl or bust season. You come up short. You had the situation with DeMar Hamlin kind of deflating this team a little bit. I don't really know what imagine if they had won that Cincinnati Bengals game and then they could have. They didn't have to. They would have gotten the first round bye, and everything could have changed for this Buffalo Bills team. This season is 100% Super Bowl or bust. Let's swing in from storylines to talk about the draft. First round pick, Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah. They took Osiris Torrance, guard out of Florida, which I thought was an absolute steal where they got him. Dorian Williams, linebacker out of Tulane. Justin Shorter, wide receiver out of Florida. Nick Broker, a guard out of Ole Miss, another depth pick there. And then Alex Austin, cornerback out of Oregon State, another depth pick at the position where they kind of need some guys at the cornerback position outside of Latavius White. A lot of question marks about Kyrie Lillam and the rest. Thoughts about taking a tight end in the first round for Buffalo?
Man, you know what? He's arguably considered the best tight end in the draft. I thought Michael Mayer was the best tight end in the draft, but that's neither here nor there. I'm gonna give this draft class a B. I think you know who was still there at 25, David, that they probably could have gotten. I don't have the list in front of me, but
I'll pull
you
it up.
have Dawson Knox still there. I don't know if you're gonna give more. I mean, he's gonna split into the reps of Dawson Knox. I think the league is kind of going to that two tight end kind of system. One more for blocking, one more for pass catching. Well, both of these guys are pass catchers. And Osiris Torrance is an absolute steal. In what, second round?
I agree
That's
with
a
you. I mean,
steal. He has a
Miles
first
Murphy was
round
still
pick.
on the board at 25. I mean, Brian Breesy, also defensive tackle out of Clemson, also on this board. Nolan Smith, another edge rusher. I mean, there were
Yeah,
guys that
could
could have
have added to the
taken.
defense. Yeah, that could have that could have been had a need. You had a need
But
defense
yeah,
position.
sure. Like their defense is one of the reasons they didn't make it. But if they want to go where they want to go, they're gonna need to score points. And how do you score points? You just put a bunch of
That's
dynamic
true.
pass catchers on your offense. Dalton Kincaid should be that for Buffalo. He's a good compliment to Dawson Knox. Um, this is probably, I also agree with the B draft on at least the first two picks. I think the Cyrus Torrance is a straight steal. He should be a day one starter.
Should be a day one starter at your guard position. And I think arguably he's probably the best guard in the draft. I don't know how he slipped to
100%.
the second
No
round.
question.
Dorian Williams, nice sideline to sideline guy. That's another depth pick for linebacker, outside linebacker. And then Justin Shorter, he had a little bit of a higher grade in the fifth round. He's a guy that probably will contribute on special teams. And then the other two guys are just practice squad guys, possibly. TJ doesn't like that I say that because it's like sixth and seventh round picks can make the team,
Yeah,
dude.
but they
Yes, they
probably won't.
can.
Yeah, Justin Shorter, 6'4", 229 pounds. Ran a little bit slower of a 40-yard dash you might expect out of the wide receiver position with 4.55 in the 40. Dorian Williams is one of only two FBS players last season with at least 125 tackles and 5 sacks. Cincinnati, Ivan Pace Jr. was the older one. He just gives you depth at linebacker. You lose Tremaine Edmonds, you got to have somebody to replace
He
that
was
guy.
sick last year. He was sick
Uh,
last year for Tulane. I mean, they went when they played USC. He was dynamic last year. He was definitely the leader of their defense.
So yeah, this is probably a pretty solid draft. It's really headlined by the first two picks. I think the verdict's still out on Dalton Kincaid if that was the right pick or not. But I love the Osiris Torrance. I expect that. I consider that a slam dunk pick. Moving on from there, let's talk about their roster shakeup. I mentioned they signed Connor McGovern. They signed three players actually for the Los Angeles Rams, and Leonard Floyd, Tyler Rapp, and David Edwards. Damian Harris and Poona Ford all come over from Buffalo and Seattle, respectively. And obviously, they lose Tremaine Edwards to the Chicago Bears. Devin Singletary signed elsewhere, who was the starting running back for this team this most recent season. Connor McGovern came from Dallas, actually. I think he may have played a season in San Francisco and in New York. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else, actually.
He's probably gonna start. He's probably gonna start for them.
Connor McGovern, he's 100%
Mm,
going to start for them. Devin Singletary now is
mm,
in Houston as potentially the starting running back there.
mm. I actually love their free agency, man. I mean, I know losing Tremaine Edmonds was kind of big, but getting Damian Harris, he's a good running back, hard nose, no south kind of guy. Getting Poona Ford, who's going to be a space feeder on your nose tackle in your defensive line, who gives you depth there. Leonard Floyd is another guy, a depth pick, edge rusher. Connor McGovern's a day one starter at guard. So what you lost in Tremaine Edmonds, you're gaining back at least 4 or 5 pieces that are going to contribute immediately for your team next year.
And I think you can make
So
the
I think
argument that
it's a good sign.
Tremaine Edmonds may not be worth the contract that the Bears gave him. 4 years, $72 million is, I think that might be a little high for a player of his caliber and his magnitude. And I think he's a definite upgrade for the Chicago Bears. But I mean, if you're the Buffalo Bills and your rosters are already expensive, you can't really afford to spend $18 million a year on a linebacker.
You gotta, I mean, man, I mean, losing Roquan Smith for the Bears, the money to sign Evans. But yeah, I do agree with you. He may not be worth that much money, but Tremaine Edmonds is. I mean, he's no easy player to replace on that defense. So they're
100%.
gonna have
I
a
agree with you on that.
tough time trying to replace him in the middle. But I love what they brought in. I think they got guys day one are gonna make their team better, in my opinion. So I'm gonna give this free agency class probably like a B plus, maybe almost an A. It's just because I look at Damian Harris, he's going to contribute right away. I mean, he was a starter in this thing. Charlie McGovern's going to be a starter. Leonard Floyd used to be a starter. Tuna Ford could be a starter. I mean, all these guys are going to have major contributions next year for this team. So,
And I personally love the Leonard Floyd, getting Leonard Floyd from the Los Angeles Rams. You put somebody consistent, you know what you're going to get out of Leonard Floyd on the other side of Von Miller. I mean, because that's really when the season kind of for Buffalo kind of fell apart, right? Like Von Miller goes down with the ACL, and they just didn't have anyone that could generate a pass rush. And Leonard Floyd should be a guy who's shown when he has another guy on the other side can produce. And with Von Miller there, he's going to have single coverage on the other side.
they have a fleet of guys now. Shaq Lawson, Greg Russo, Von Miller,
Yep.
Leonard Floyd, AJ Epinesa. I mean, they have a lithium. They have a troop of guys.
Boogie Basham still on
even
this roster too. Like
even in the defensive tackle position. I mean, like they have four guys that like the defensive line. It's like they're going to be swapping guys out, and they're going to be fresh, and those guys are going to be coming hard at you. So I like what Buffalo did. They got depth at that D line position this season.
because that's, I mean, one of the reasons that they fell apart last season is they didn't have depth in the trenches. They were getting eaten alive by Cincinnati's running game. And so this is a pretty solid free agent class, pretty solid roster shakeup. Let's swing into there. Let's talk about the schedule. Just looking at their games on the schedule, let's talk about the first one of the season. They go to New York to go toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers. I think this game is on prime time. It'll be on Monday Night Football. It is on Monday Night Football. You got Jets or Bills in that one?
Ooh, I'm going. It's in New York. I'm going with the Bills to win this one. Bills for 5 wins for the Jets. Shake off new team quarterback.
I agree with you. I actually think Buffalo sweeps all the teams in their division. I think Miami is the only team that even gives them a run for their money. But in total, I have them sweeping all of the teams in the AFC East. Let's swing into week number 2. The Las Vegas Raiders come into Orchard Park. I think that's a W for the Buffalo Bills.
Definitely a W for the Buffalo Bills.
From there, they go to FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, take on the Washington Commanders. I think they continue to get on the 3-0 victory. They beat the Washington Commanders, who could be the worst team in the NFL.
Yes, they are going to beat the Washington Commanders. They start out 3-0 on the year.
And then they technically have 3 home games in a row. They have one division rival and then one in-state rival. And then they go to London, take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they got Miami, Jacksonville, Giants. How do you see those 3 games shaking out for the Buffalo Bills?
I see them beating Miami at home. I think they lose to Jacksonville in London. And they beat the New York Giants at home. So they're right now, they're 5-1.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think they do beat Miami. I think they do beat New York. I actually think they go to London and beat Jacksonville. I think the Buffalo fan base will travel. I think they'll have a better presence in that stadium than the Jacksonville Jaguars will. I think that I think that there's still a better team than Jacksonville on paper. And I don't think this is early enough in this or late enough in the season for it to be a quote unquote trap game. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. From there, they got a kind of a little bit more of a difficult stretch here with 3 games in a row. The first they go to New England. Tampa Bay comes into Orchard Park, and then they go to Cincinnati for a rematch of the divisional round. And again, they got spanked in their own building in Orchard Park. How do you see these 3 games shaking out?
I think they go to New England and they lose in New England. Well, no, they beat New England. They sweep everybody except I think they do a home and home with Miami. So they sweep New England. So they beat New England. They definitely beat Tampa Bay. And they go into Cincinnati and they lose to Cincinnati. So I got them at 7-1 so
far. So you got them 7-2. You got them losing to Jacksonville as well.
7-2.
I think 7-2. I think this is the stretch where they lose their first game of the season. I think they go to Cincinnati, and I think they do lose. But I do think they beat Tampa Bay, and I think they sweep New England. I just think they're a better team than New England is. From there, as I got them at 8-1, from there, they got 3 games in a row before their bye. First, Denver comes to town. The Jets come back into town to rematch in week number 1, and then they go to the Link and take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Izzy, how do you think these 3 games
I think they dropped 2 in a row. I think they – no. I thought that game was away. Yeah, Denver's not going into Orchard Park and beating them. So, no, they beat Denver at home. They beat New York at home. And they lose to Philadelphia on the road. So right now I got them at 9-3.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think they beat Denver. I think even in Denver, even in Mile High, I think they're still a tough match for the Denver Broncos. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think they sweep the Jets. And yeah, Lincoln going against the reigning NFC champions. I think that's a tough matchup for the Buffalo Bills. I think they lose to Philly. Then they got their bye week, and then out of their bye, they got a little bit of a mini gauntlet here, where they got 2 games on the road against AFC West opponents, and then they got to take on the Cowboys in their own building. How do you see these 3 games shaking out? Kansas City, Dallas, and then rounding it out with the Chargers.
With the Chargers. I think they go to Kansas City and they beat Kansas City in Kansas City off the bye week. Perfect time to have a bye week late in the season. 10-3. They come back home, they beat Dallas, 11-3, and then they go to LA. And this right here, this is going to be a shootout game, but I'm going to go with the Chargers to win this game. I got them at 11-4.
So for whatever reason in the regular season, Buffalo seems to have Kansas City's number. They beat them 2 straight games at home. In the regular season, obviously they fell in that playoff game, but that they've beaten them 2 times in a row against Kansas City in the regular season. I think that streak continues. I actually agree with you on all your takes on this. I think they go to that. I think Dallas comes to town. I think they beat Dallas as well. And I think they go to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. I think they fall, even though I do think that they will have a bigger presence in that stadium than the Chargers will. Even though that's a home game for the Chargers, I think there will be more Buffalo Bill fans in that stadium than there will be Charger fans. I will have the Chargers winning that game. And then they wrap up the final 2 games of the season in the AFC East. First, they got the New England Patriots at home, and then they go to South Beach, taking on the Miami Dolphins.
I got them at 12-5 for the year. They beat New England. They lose the last game of the season to Miami in Miami. 12-5 for the Buffalo Bills. I think that's still good enough to win that division, but it'll be close. I think, in my opinion, I think it'll be close between them, the Jets, and Miami. I think it'll be 1 game, 2 games.
I did the Miami Dolphins episode on Tuesday. I do not remember what I had their record as. I think I actually had them at like 8-9. They have a very tough record for a team that was the second place team in the AFC West last season. With that being said, I have Buffalo sweeping both those last 2 games. I think they beat down New England in Buffalo, and then they go to South Beach. Yeah, they beat Miami in South Beach. I know like the cold weather stuff. We go into a hot weather temperature. I don't really care. I think Buffalo is just a better team. I have Buffalo finishing the season 14-3, and I think they're the number 1 seed in the AFC.
12-5. I don't know. I don't think they're the number 1. I don't know if they're the number 1 team in the AFC, but I got them at 12-5. I think when I look at the AFC, I think I had the Ravens probably number 1 team in the AFC next year. So
okay, we'll see that ends up checking out. I got them at 14-3. I have them the number 1 seed in the AFC. But yeah, thank you very much for checking us out. Let us know what you think the Buffalo Bills record will be when the season is over. Also, let you know what we thought about their draft and their offseason and just the storylines we talked about in general. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Tomorrow, we're swinging into the NFC East, as we're going to be talking about the Washington Commanders, as they were the worst team in that division and probably will be this upcoming season as well, as they got all the turmoil going on there. But thank you very much for joining us. I'm David Huppman, right there, Israel Rivera, and Izzy. What do we do here at the prom, my friend?
Take the glasses off and look at Josh Allen in the eyes and say, "Bring Buffalo a Super Bowl." We bring the heat here,
Bring the heat. Oh yeah, Josh Allen. Bring Orchard Park a Super Bowl. They've been dying for it, man. So we'll see how it ends up checking out. You all have a good night and stay safe out there.
Peace out, guys.